I wonder if everyone could take a seat. We're going to start in about 20 seconds. Thank you. I wonder if everyone could, okay. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Thanks.
Alderman Lauer,
Here.
Alderman Sage,
Here.
Alderman Malomboy,
Here.
Alderman Burgess, here, Alderman Painter, here, Alderman Schmidt, here, Alderman Black,
Here.
Alderman Hammond, here, Alderman Fruin,
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. We have public comment this evening, and in order to move through it expeditiously, I'll read all the three names at once. We'll start with Patricia Martin, then Gary Lambert, and Alton Franklin. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm most distressed to hear of the increase of legislative cuts for abuse victims, as outlined in recent media reports, a subject that I'm particularly concerned about, especially regarding the elderly and the disabled. As stated earlier, the Crisis Intervention Team training program for police officers is also on hold. For police officers needed to train officers to handle situations like this more skillfully. Quite simply, we cannot afford to let this happen. Here in McLean County, we are acknowledging this in our prospective mental health action plan that appears in a quite impressive booklet that I've been reading periodically. And I'm particularly pleased with the comments of board members John McIntyre and Susan Schaefer, and I quote, "This will not be another report sitting on a shelf," unquote. We must continue to put this into practice. Men and also women who mishandle those who are weaker than themselves are ill, and they must be identified and treated as such. They cannot hit our families or our institutions. I sincerely hope that our county can set standards for the rest of the state and therefore encourage our lawmakers to follow their examples. And once more, Mr. Mayor, I'm very glad to see your name on the advisory group member list, as well as that of Mr. Sorensen and a host of other community leaders, including our police chiefs, sheriffs, and state's attorney general. I've been attending sessions in Springfield since May, and I've listened to a good number of legislators with interests and concerns similar to mine and ours. Some I have actually met, others I have corresponded with based on speeches I've heard them give in the Senate and House and in various committees, and last week at a legislative meeting at Bromen. I feel they are concerned men and women and will hopefully lead us through the morass that we are currently in. So I plan to continue going to Springfield and will also correspond with them, sending copies of this talk as well as other material that can be of help and encouragement to all of us. Also last week I received a letter from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services stating that the Administration for Community Living has awarded the first ever federal grants to improve adult protective services systems for elderly and disabled subjects of abuse. So this is quite a... The Illinois Department on Aging will receive $300,000 for expanded and computerized assessment programs. This obviously fits in with one of the county plan's long-term objectives, which is to engage federal and state legislators about community needs, so we should be happy and proud about this as well, and it should also hopefully help us to restore some of the issues, to resolve some of the issues that we've mentioned earlier. Okay, thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. Again, Gary Lambert, Alton Franklin, and then Lee Utsi.
Good evening. Got a couple of props here tonight. Finally found an editorial from the Panagraph that I agree with. This is from October 8th. It's directed to this group. sure you've all read it. Tighten belt, outline goals before tax hike. And I certainly don't intend to read this. It basically agrees with your 0.25% hike for mental health, questions the remainder of it. Yet this group, when David Sage offered a suggestion to make that separate, soundly rejected. The ink is hardly dry on that, and we here again tonight talking about more revenue, specifically for the waste truck. And Mr. Hill said that was our highest priority right now. Today's paper, good news, positive revenue trends. I would suggest to you that each of those increased dollars is a dollar that has been extracted from the public. That's not a bonanza. That's not a gift. That's not for you to spend contrary to what the public wants of you. Today's paper also, Social Security, 0% cost of living. There are some, I hope you all remember it, that's their sole income. And it appears to me that you can't wait to find more and more ways to extract revenue from them. How you can, with good conscience, contemplate going out with any new projects while you have the current situation with infrastructure going unaddressed is beyond me. There's going to be a day.
Elton Franklin, Lee Utze, and Brent Van Holen.
My name is Alton Franklin. I reside at 508 Patterson Drive here in Bloomington, Illinois. You know, I've been watching over the months with some degree of mild hope. Hope springs eternal, as the old saying goes. But more and more, I'm becoming less hopeful because I continue to hear about how we're going to spend. You know, I understand that prioritizations, we do have to make up our mind on how we're going to spend our money, what we're going to do. But there comes a point where you got to understand that just because the people still have checks does not mean the city still has money. You need to back off, folks. It's time to let the folks here, the citizens of this city, catch their breath, their financial breath, and stop nickel and diming us to death. And for some folks, it's more than a nickel or dime. As Gary was just alluding to, there's a lot of folks we've got. I live in a neighborhood that has a large percentage of folks that Social Security is a mainstay to their financial being. So if there's no cost of living there and they get bit some more, it just takes them closer to the track of, as they used to talk about, the little old ladies eating cat food. I would hope that doesn't happen. There is a kind of a brighter side to today. It celebrates a portion of my heritage of which I am very proud. I am significantly a Native American, and I don't know so much how I feel about that poor Italian guy, old Chris, losing his day, but I feel great about some acknowledgement to what my folks, my ancestors have gone through. One last thing, I got a very dear friend of mine that brought up, I thought, a really good idea. I don't know how many folks have gone past the Mitsubishi area, but they've got some real nice fields out there, folks. And they're going away, and I mean, we can look through our rose-colored glasses and talk about how Toyota or Subaru or somebody else is going to come in, but the reality is I haven't seen any significant movements in that direction. Maybe I'm just being kept in the dark. I've always been part mushroom, too. especially as regards to stuff that comes out of this council. But the thought was brought to me, and I think it's a great one, that Mitsubishi could be approached and say, hey, folks, on your way out the door, how about doing a nice thing for the folks here and providing a contribution in kind to help us out, let our kids have a place to go out and do their soccer, do their baseball, whatever it is that they can do on a space like that. Just a thought. But please, let's look at some spending, folks.
Okay, Lee Utze, Brent Van Holen, and Donna Bolin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So who am I? Why am I here? And what do I want? I'm Lee Utze. I own Magic Bus Shuttle business that operates downtown. Why am I here? They are rewriting. They have a proposal to rewrite Chapter 40 that governs vehicle for hire and taxi. I'm not here for the taxi or Uber or anybody else. Just talk about vehicle for hire. I'm in support of most of it. Most of it was redundant. There was problems, needed some changing. There's 3 specific things that I have a problem with. But I want to tell you just a little bit about my company. There's a lot of companies downtown. I use buses. I have big buses. I move 50 people at a time. We get them right where we want them. They get out. We take them home, 50 people at a time, 3 buses downtown. So we get them in and out quickly, and that's why you like us. This is the Downtown Nightlife Project. It's only entitled 2013. It's not that old. And it talks about things like reducing fights, illegal consumption by minors, resisting and obstructing, crowd control. We get them out of the downtown before the bar lights are cold. Okay, there's a lot of 15-passenger vans. They can't do that. Here's our problem. We don't have parking anymore. When this was put together, there was a lot of life at the top of the hill of 100 block West Washington. That's been nil for a couple of years. I made this plain to Bloomington Legal and such last September 2014. We need more parking, and there's also a problem. We have there's a very strange 15-minute rule. I'm supposed to load 50 people in buses in 15 minutes and move. Either that, and it's written so strange, we don't know. Some cops want us to make, the Chinese fire drill around the block. All of us, some say one moves forward and the other one. We need to get rid of the 15-minute rule. We need more parking. There's Mulberry and there's Market. These are very good places. If nobody else wants to go there, I'll go there. So the parking. And the problem is the new proposal wants to put the chiefs of police in charge of giving and taking away parking. I have a little bit of a problem with that. I've got this letter from last year from the chief of police of Normal where he tells me that we will no longer allow vehicles for hire to load and unload passengers on School Street next to the lodge. If you have to travel north, you must use Main Street. He doesn't even have a mandate, and he's already telling me that, I'm going to just travel north on Main Street. I can't travel north on School Street. I think that's something we should avoid, making the chiefs of police in charge. It's been said to be it's too difficult to get things done if we need to change parking. I was the person who raised my hand in a meeting and said, can we have a law that says no more drinking on the buses? The next meeting, you guys voted it in. I think it was unanimous. It's not that difficult. So that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Lee. Okay, Brent Van Holen, Donna Bolin, and Judy Stearns.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brent Van Holen. Some of you may or may not know me. I'm a former police officer for the city of Bloomington. Last year in May, I was fired, filed agreements to get my job back. 2 weeks later, I was charged criminally in McLean County. Just last week, I was acquitted of those charges. And I'm here tonight, as I sat here tonight for one of the first meetings I've ever been in since I was sworn in 20 years ago this month. Seems like the big topic here is finances, the budget, how to save money, how to cut costs. I'm coming here tonight in good faith with that specific intent in mind. My intentions are fully to return to Bloomington Police Department as a police officer. What I'm asking of you is, there's been several officers, 3 that I know of for sure that have been fired and been reinstated with a cost of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to the city and to the taxpayers. I'm asking, I don't want to fight anymore. I violated a policy. I committed no crime. Under our contract with the City of Bloomington, the collective bargaining contract, there's a series of progressive discipline. I have never been disciplined in my entire career. I have an impeccable service record, and I went immediately from no discipline to the death sentence of being fired. Prior to my termination, I met with Chief Hefner. I asked him, or I told him, that I haven't lied about anything during the course of an internal investigation. And Chief, you agreed with me on that. And my biggest problem with the internal investigation was I was charged with writing a ticket to a lady who I never, ever had contact with. I never wrote a ticket to her, but I believe that was the basis for me being fired. And Chief, I'm talking to you right now, man to man, father to father. I swear on my life and my children's life, I never wrote Beverly Throgmorton a ticket. And the information you got in a record system that was riddled with mistakes is what I believe you guys based my termination on. What I'm asking you is, I intend to go full forward with getting my job back. I do not want to fight anymore. I'm willing to sit down without lawyers and discuss it with the city and try to come to some peaceful, reasonable solution to this, to where we're not wasting any more of the taxpayers' time or money. And I'm asking you guys to consider it behind closed doors, talk amongst yourselves, but I'm not going away. I'm not backing down. I want my job back. I have 10 good years of service left to this community, and I intend to come back and work for this community and the city. I just ask you guys to think about that from a financial standpoint. We've made mistakes before. You've fired attorneys before. You've been taken advantage of before. Let's not make the same mistake again.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead. Thank you. We're going to move on to Donna Bolin, Judy Stearns, and then Glenn Ludwig.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to say I'm very pleased with the aldermen that have taken the initiative to address the cuts. I looked at the list. It's very extensive, and I'd like to see it go forward. But I am kind of confused, and I kind of would like some clarification. In April of last year, there was budget concerns, so the taxes went up, and then now we're in a budget crisis, taxes went up, but there's reporting that on the radio, the finance director said that the tax increase will not cover the budget deficit, and there are no more cuts to be made. So hopefully what you're going to be doing is not wasted time. And then also, the report comes out that revenue is up, so I'm confused. And then tonight, you had a closed-door session to discuss the purchase of land. So where are we going here? Is there a budget deficit? Are we in a crisis? Do we have money? Are we buying? Are we spending more? The future of the city, instead of growing and redevelopment in the downtown, is going to be driven to the ground, and I'm really concerned about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Judy Stearns, and then Glenn Ludwig.
Thank you. Well, I have to congratulate you, Mayor Renner. In 2000, I think it was 14, March, the Pantograph quoted you as saying, "I'm attempting to foster or something, a council that has the same vision for the city that I have." And I do have to congratulate you because I certainly think that you have that. You've got appointees, you've got people you supported, and you not only, so you certainly have that. And I think all of you would be pretty hard-pressed to tell me the last time that you voted against anything that the mayor and or Mr. Hales and or the status quo. I mean, please email me, Mayor, let me know. It did happen recently, though. It happened with the sales tax vote. And again, I congratulate Alderman Lauer and Alderman Malalamoy, because it seems that the rest of you, including you, Mayor, your vision for the city seems to be to fleece the taxpayers in every possible way, every possible time. And in fact, I don't think until we are equal to the Chicago suburbs, you're going to stop. I don't think there's any way that you're going to stop, because the watchword is always more, 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 no matter what. And not only do you have the council, but I think you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find criticism in our local press. Criticism of you, honest, real criticism of you or of any of you who support the status quo. It's good for your health and good for your well-being to support the status quo. And you all know what happens when you don't. So congratulations. I think you all don't have too much to worry about. The notable exception, of course, is Alderman Lauer, who is constantly the voice for the people of Bloomington. And Alderman Mboka, you seem to care about the less fortunate, the poor, the single mother, the working poor, those who truly cannot afford this. And it's not just this. It's the philosophy, it's what the intention is, which is how can we get more money from the people of Bloomington. And you recently even saw the information in the newspaper, be it true or not, about quotas. We're ignoring, our police officers are asked to ignore calls for, just ordinary service, I guess dogs barking or noise or something, so that they can extract more money from the citizens. Now that's not on them, not at all. That is on whoever approves and comes up with these kinds of plans. And I assure you, the citizens of Bloomington are becoming more and more aware. And there is a breaking point. The Panagraph finally had a negative word to say about your constant fleecing of the citizens. It's wrong to seek an increase before determining the type and number of cuts. Well, is it wrong to seek an increase before you've even acknowledged $1.3 million that flew out of this city for no reason at all? Could have been used to balance the solid waste budget. But I haven't heard anything from any of you about this egregious waste, not of your money, but of the citizens of Bloomington's money. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn Ludwig. Okay. Thank you very much. I suspect that's appreciated. Thanks, Glenn. We're going to go ahead and move right along. We've got some recognitions. The first is the appointment of Odamaris Mancia Sabaja. Would you please stand? Thank you. Next to the Human Relations Commission. And then I believe we've got beautification awards. Are we going to go ahead and present those, or do I announce them then here? Or
As I can recall, I think that's been postponed. They weren't ready
oh,
for
mine's
tonight.
still on my list. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Okay, I apologize for that. We'll go on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone want to have pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, please. 7F.
7F, as in Frank?
That's correct.
Okay. Alderwoman Hellman?
I'd like to pull 6A only because I wasn't here for the October 2012 work session.
6A?
Yeah, I'm just not comfortable.
Oh, see, actually, I've got the wrong.
My book says 7F. That's what I was looking at.
No, it says 6 for consent
Okay,
agenda.
then we're.
Okay, well, there must have been an addendum that I wasn't aware of, because I'm holding the book right here in my hand.
There was an addendum, and I've got
There
the
was
wrong.
an addendum, okay.
Okay,
Well,
so essentially,
this is pertaining to the Lennon Street Bridge.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, that's F, and that is the same on this. Okay, is there an additional one that you want to pull?
She doesn't want to vote on a meeting that she hasn't attended.
A meeting that you haven't attended. Okay, so is there a motion then to approve the consent agenda with the exception of A and F? Okay.
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Black. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Painter. Okay? Right, sorry.
And Mayor, with regard to the consent agenda, I have not received any monies or financial benefits from any of the individuals or organizations referenced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, if everyone will go ahead now and vote. Thank you. All right, the motion carries 9-0, Madam Clerk. Thank you very much. And now we move to the consideration of the minutes. And So I don't think it's something where you have to leave the room. Okay. And is there a motion to approve of the minutes? as
I'd like
presented?
to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented to
Is
us.
there, I'm sorry, excuse me, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Painter. Okay. Please go ahead and vote. Okay. The motion carries 8-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Okay. And then we move now right along to item F, and that's Alderman Lauer.
Mr.
I really
Mayor,
don't have a question, other than the fact
Oh, I'm
that...
sorry.
I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself on this one since I did from the prior engineering contract.
Oh, okay, so you're going to leave. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Just to again identify the amount of additional spending to increase the span of this bridge to accommodate a possible expansion of Constitution Trail sometime into the future. I believe that's 6F. Sorry for my confusion. I was unaware of the addendum. Got it. 6F, that's correct, yes. And I don't know whether we need to call Jim up to confirm that, but I believe this is 40% more expensive for the additional span, in case we might, at some point in the future, route Constitution Trail under that bridge.
Jim, you want to come forward? We have, I think, probably the third time we've talked about this, but if you can clarify this for us.
Well, first, let me apologize. This should not be before you tonight. The last time this was brought up as the council in September, we had brought this to you. It was intended to have a resolution. The resolution is my fault, did not get attached, and so because of that, we brought it before you as a council tonight to pass the resolution. So as a council, you've already approved this. Be glad to address your question. Yes, this does increase. We had estimated, and they're still working on final estimates, of
Right.
course, but in the range of $300,000 extra for that widening. The intent, as you recall, was whenever you do a bridge, it's not a 10-year or 20-year bridge. It is a 50 to 100-year type decision. And so with the bicycle master plan, the trail master plan from Parks, all including somewhere along Sugar Creek, a Constitution Trail long-term, this was the time to do that additional work. There's not an opportunity to go back whenever you talk about widening it, so this was the time to look at it. So again, that was the reasoning.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Okay. All right. And is there a motion then to approve, or was there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Black. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Again, a aye vote obviously is in favor, and nay vote is in opposition to this as presented. The motion carries 7-1, one nay to announce, Madam Clerk.
Alderman Lauer.
Okay. All right. If you could have Amelia come back in. And we'll move right along to our regular agenda. And under the first one is item 7A, Legislative Overview of Law Enforcement Officer Body Worn Camera Act. And we have a brief presentation by Mr. Jeff Juergens. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. There's a more detailed background memo in your packet. I don't want to go through that in detail tonight, but just wanted to give some highlights, both for the Council and the public, so they have a little bit of an understanding to start the discussion as the city begins to look at body cameras for its police officers. This all came to fruition with the adoption of what's called the Law Enforcement Officer Worn Body Camera Act. It's important to note at the very beginning of this that this act does not require law enforcement agencies to utilize body cameras. There's no provision in Illinois law that mandates that all police officers wear body cameras. But what this law does is say if you're going to use body cameras, you have to implement certain standards and you have to follow certain guidelines. This act establishes some minimum guidelines, but then says that the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Standards Board will actually implement the final rules and regulations. Those final rules and regulations have not been adopted yet. I think they anticipate having those in place in December. The law then goes into effect January 1, 2016. So if the city of Bloomington is going to utilize body cameras, and the chief will talk about that next, they will have to follow certain standards and protocols, and this act gives some kind of bottom line standards, and that's what we're just going to roughly go through tonight. First is that these cameras have to be equipped so that they will record at least 30 seconds prior to the camera activation. They also have to be able to record for a period of 10 or more hours. This starts to lay the groundwork for, these are going to be specialized cameras. There will be some expense to it. And as we go through some of these standards, you'll start to see some other things that will, put a light bulb in your head that there's going to be some cost to this program, and it's not just as simple as equipping the officers with body cameras. The law sets forth certain restrictions on when the cameras must be on and when they must be off. Specifically, they must be on when the officer's on duty and responding to a call. That's a pretty easy one. What's a little less, perhaps easy is the officer, making sure it's off when they are talking to a victim of a crime and the victim requests it to be turned off, or the witness talking to a witness and they request it to be off, or they're interacting with a confidential informant. There's always exceptions to these rules, including if the officer believes that this person is engaged in criminal activity or was engaged in criminal activity, then they can keep the camera on. Another thing you'll see with these standards is there's potentially some gray area. Some of these policies might be flushed out when the final rules are adopted, but again, we're kind of talking at the high level here. The cameras can also be turned off during caretaking functions. What they mean by caretaking function is like when an officer is at a town hall, when they are providing death notifications, helping the sick, helping a kid find a parent are all examples of caretaking functions. They don't necessarily have to have the camera on and recording in those situations. There are certain privacy protections that the law contemplates. For example, the police officer must provide notice of recording to any person with a reasonable expectation of privacy. So the question becomes, well, what exactly does that mean? A couple of examples might be if the police officer is going into somebody's home, they would have to notify the person that they are, recording and that type of thing. Or if they're going into a hospital room or that type of a thing. So they have to make sure that people understand that they are recording them. There's also limitations on the access to the recordings and the labeling process. All of that is restricted. So it's not just that anybody at City Hall is going to have access to these recordings. That's going to be a very tightly controlled process. And there are also FOIA limitations. So the law doesn't contemplate that just because we have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of police video recordings, that all of that is going to be public. There are going to be certain restrictions on who can receive those videos under FOIA. Again, when we talk about some of the expense of this, the recordings must be kept for a minimum of 90 days. So no matter what the recording is of, it's got to be kept for 90 days. However, if it's flagged, then it has to be kept for a minimum of 2 years or until the disposition of legal proceedings if there are still legal proceedings going on. You ask, okay, well, what does flag mean? Flag means that a formal complaint's been filed, that a weapon was discharged or lethal force was used. In that situation, you automatically are keeping the recording. If an arrest was made, you'd automatically have to keep the recording for that period of time. If the officer is subject to some sort of internal investigation, you're keeping the recording. The officer requests to be kept, or if there's great bodily harm to somebody, then you would be required to keep that recording for the longer period of time. Finally, the law also contemplates an annual report be given to the Training and Standards Board. This report is fairly extensive, requires you to give an overview of the law enforcement agency and the number of officers using body cameras and the number of officers in general, any technical issues that you've experienced with the body cameras and how that has been remedied, description of your review process of videos, And I think probably the most time-consuming aspect of this is you have to detail any time recordings were used in prosecutions, whether it be at the circuit court, ordinance violations, or whatever. Anytime recordings were used in a case, you have to document the time, date, and location of the incident, the offense charged, and the date the charges were filed. So along with kind of maintaining body cameras, there will be some record-keeping functions that the police department will have to be involved in to make sure they have, compliance. Of course, that's data the city can use, but it'll also be filed with the state trainings board, and then any other information that they deem relevant to the program. Again, this is just a very brief, high-level overview. There will be more rules and regulations coming out. I think this is something that will also probably see some case law help develop on some of the interpretations of the law over time. But this is just designed to to give everybody a level playing ground for what the minimum standards are going to be for the use of these cameras. With that, unless there are questions, I'll turn this over to Chief Hefner.
Okay. Chief?
Good evening, council, citizens. I wanted to talk to you about the body-worn cameras and just kind of give you an overview. Waiting on the tech person. In using the body-worn cameras, we will be relying on him a lot. So basically what I wanted to do is just give you a brief overview on the cameras, as I think when I'm done you will see that there is a lot to digest when you see these. And another point I wanted to make is that this did not come about because of Ferguson or any other incidents. We were looking at the possibility of these prior to that, and just kind of reading information and talking to a couple other agencies, and obviously since some other incidents have occurred, they have come to the forefront in a lot of ways, and obviously there's a law going into effect on the 1st. As Mr. Juergens says, it does not mandate it, but being a progressive police department as we are going to strongly consider them. We would like to experiment with them, and then at some time, when it's fiscally possible, acquire them. So having said that, what do they look like? As you see, there's not just one type of camera. I'm going to pass around a sample that looks similar to one up there. As you see, there are many kinds. Similar to the one I'm passing around, you see there's some affixed to glasses. Some are similar. You see they can be worn on the collar, put at other angles possibly. A majority of them you will see are affixed to the chest, and then you see one that can possibly go around your head. And then you'll see the one here that's pretty interesting where there's a screen attached. So as you see, there are a lot of choices. And I will tell you, just like any other technology when it's new, there are a lot of vendors out here. Many vendors. How the public perceives us, our department as a whole, directly impacts our effectiveness. The perception of our use of force is a concern not only to our department, but any department. And the cameras allow for us to have an additional perspective of something. As you know, we already have dash cameras within the cars. This affords us an opportunity to possibly get another look at something. And always, everything does not occur in front of the vehicle, so obviously having a body camera is a bonus. I would almost look at it as a backup if you're away from there. However, if you noticed, you saw most of those affixed to the chest area. Well, obviously, if I have something on my chest and I look to my left or right and something's going on, something could go on over there that may cause me to react, possibly in a use of force situation that may not be caught on the camera. So they're very good. They're going to be very helpful, but just like anything else, it doesn't mean it will catch everything. And also, there are already, citizens are videotaping things, and we've seen these. There will always be some things that are subject to interpretation, but at least we can have that information. So like I said, they're just an additional piece of evidence. Results of a study out in Rialto was approximately a year old, or a year in duration. The knowledge of the cameras, as they found out, reduced escalation of citizen and police contact on both sides, abusive behaviors by citizens, unnecessary use of force by police. And basically what they were saying is that because citizens knew that the officers were wearing cameras, not in all cases, and officers had them on, maybe somebody might be a little less hostile when you confront them. And obviously, if someone's a little less hostile, then that lowers, everybody's calmness. The officer can react better, or, sometimes we have officers maybe who need to know that they have a camera on so they know that they need to act right. We're all human. But if the results are accurate, and they've looked at that and actually went over a 3-year period eventually, citizen and officer injuries could expect to be reduced, legal and civil liabilities, citizens' complaints. I think we all know right now in this atmosphere that our trust is very important. And we feel that anything that we could use as a tool to instill that, to show the public that they can trust us and believe in our integrity, I think is very important. We would like to increase our positive relationships with citizens and police, our accountability, transparency, and defensibility. Anytime we have something, as I said earlier, if it's there and we can view it, that helps us sustain our stance in any given situation. And also, as stated before from the Rialto, reduction in injuries, both citizens and officers, citizens' complaint, and civil judgments. The challenges, the technology. I see Alderman Black grinning. I think he must be aware, emerging and changing technologies. As I said before, there are a lot of vendors out there. You only saw one camera up there with that screen. The makers of that camera will say it works very good, because you can imagine if you see yourself hollering and screaming and you're looking at yourself, that might help diffuse things. However, for us, when we're going to look at things, we have to figure out what's best for our department, the durability of the camera. I don't know how durable the screens are. I know that company has not been out that long. Since our other agencies out doing things, we don't have to be the first. We can use some of their information in addition to what we do. But looking at the challenges, like I said, determining what's right for us. Durability, battery life. They said a minimum of 10 hours. Sometimes we're out working 12 hours, 13 hours. Additional support in the form of staffing. A lot of information needs to be downloaded from these cameras and stored somewhere. Secure storage and retention of an enormous amount of data. The part that we're always concerned about is fiscal. And from the research that we've been doing, I know some people had cameras before, but kind of the things we've been looking at, average $800 to $1,200 each. We're looking at between 80 to 100 cameras initially to provide adequate coverage. I don't know if we will assign them. That's kind of how we do the portables, each officer. But then again, there's some technology out there with some of these cameras that as soon as you go get it, you log in, all your information is put on that camera. So we will be weighing all that. When we review
information. When we look at footage, you know, if there's an hour on there, if we're reviewing it and redacting information, it takes more than an hour to do that. So if you're looking at 1 to 2 hours conservatively, you could be looking at video of a day could exceed 140 hours a day. And also, obviously, as I said, we'd be working with IT. There are hardware costs, servers, storage, replacement, upgrades, service contracts, just like any other piece of technology. Cloud-based storage, we've seen that as much as $99 per month per officer. Many things to look at. Costs related to staffing increase for FOIA requests. I was looking at information since last year. We have received at the police department since last November 824 FOIA requests. Average about obviously 82 per month. 1,170 hours spent filling these requests. And that's in addition to what the staff is doing. And that would be in addition to trying to maintain all of that information. In closing, societal expectations. We are a progressive department. A department of our size should be progressive. Police and community relations will be strengthened just by the simple fact that we do have the cameras. We can show that we're trying to do all we can to be as transparent as we can when we're out working to get all the information we need if we have to review something. Consequences, I'm sure there are going to be people in the public. There will be people in the public who will be asking January 1st, why don't you have them? You're supposed to have them because everybody still thinks that it's mandated, which it's not. And any event that we have, someone will be asking, well, if you had a body-worn camera, would that make a difference? Or why don't you have a body-worn camera? We get those questions sometimes if there's a dash cam, an officer's got out the vehicle, and the mic wasn't working properly. And I know you'll find this hard to believe, but there are some conspiracy theorists out here. Like nothing can go wrong. Anybody knows technology, some things happen. I'll just leave that. Some things happen. Okay, but we have to do, I believe, what we can. I will tell you a personal story. When I was with the state police back in the early 90s, I was on a Valkyrie team, basically a drug interdiction team. We worked the interstate as a unit, and we were very successful in removing a lot of narcotics off the interstate, large quantities, semi-loads, and vehicles, passenger cars, trucks, and a lot of the searches were the results of consent searches. And people called into question our integrity because they said, why would somebody who has 100 pounds of cocaine or 100 keys let you search their vehicle? And we would explain, well, for one, they don't think you're going to find it. They've hidden it that well. And in other cases, the people don't even know it's really in there because they're mules. But our integrity was always called into question. We were one of the first units. One officer was given a dash cam. We were a little nervous about it. Not that we were doing anything wrong, but if you start thinking that everything you do is going to be on camera, it does make you think a little bit. But you know what? It proved and it showed people that what we were doing, we weren't coercing anybody. We were still doing the same work and being successful. And later working in internal investigations, just like here, when people have complaints, they come in and see me, and people sometimes, I think the word is misremember. They come in and look at the video and say, well, maybe it didn't occur the way I thought. That's the same thing that I would expect with the body cam. So all I would tell you is that we want to use the funds to exercise due diligence starting somewhere around the first of the year, 60 maybe to 90 days. Get some different cameras, use them on different shifts to assess them, both day, night, assess durability, have different people use them. So when the city is fiscally ready, and we have narrowed it down to a camera that we feel works best for this department, then I will come back and show that to you.
Okay.
So
Questions to the chief?
don't ask me too many because there's a lot of questions out there still to be answered.
Alderman Black.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief and Jeff, for the information. I find this stuff fascinating because it's the future.
I figured that.
I guess the piece I'm most interested in. Well, first of all, I'll just say that the technology, you get what you pay for. So we might save some money, going with a low bid, but you might have one that falls apart, at the first sign of trouble. So
I can count on you then, because
yes.
that's what that's durability is major, and accessibility. Right now, our dash cams. What I will tell you, is that once they get into a certain proximity of the department, they download automatically. There's an agency in another state that I talked to that they went out, got body cameras early. They were manually downloaded. They were spending money having officers off the street after a couple of days to stay in and download them, and then sometimes having to pay overtime.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to look to cut 2, 3, 4 times before we narrow down what we have. Well, please go
And
ahead.
there's a lot of ways to go about that. I'm sure that there are a lot of vendors willing to talk to you about how they will do it best for the city of Bloomington. So that'll be interesting. I guess my piece that I'm mostly interested in at this time is the FOIA component, because I think that there are a lot of people out there that abuse the FOIA for what it is. I'm sure you see a lot of it on your end.
Comment.
Yeah, no comment. And I see the FOIA reports that we get, and I guess what I'm mostly nervous about is part of this. I'm not saying it's not a roadblock that we can overcome, but when I did my ride along with the police, we saw some things that were violent, very bad. There was a kid that was running around naked. There was a lot of things that were happening, and I guess my concern would be, are we able to craft policies, procedures, and when we can allow footage to be released, or redacted, or blurred, or...
I would say, yes, that's coming. We're actually going to have a policy that we will have to run through Mr. Juergen's shop to even do the trial. But yes, in answer to your question, and that's one thing I forgot, redaction software.
Yeah.
So when that's going on, we can redact out faces and other things.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is if it's I believe the law says if it's a victim or a witness or, somebody that's the subject of the video, there's requirements that you have to get their sign off before it's released. And the language is not worded that well, quite honestly, in the statute, but it does contemplate, various privacy rights in those situations. So that's something that generally, I think that'll have to be, flushed out a little bit more, but that's certainly a concern.
Right, because I'm musing here. I would imagine at some point if there's extra time that goes into, say, redacting it or blurring it or doing something, that would be a piece. If you want to FOIA it, you got to pay for that service. I don't know if we can do that or how that would shake out.
I will tell you that we had a FOIA request for I think it was either a week or a month of dash cam from our officers. And fortunately, we were able to get them to narrow it down to a day. It still took 3 hours for us to look at that information in order to redact what we could, because obviously also you have the audio part, criminal history information, things of this nature that would not be able to be heard by somebody else, a citizen. 3 days for 1 day. So yes,
Yeah,
it will be a lot.
That's a piece. So thank you.
Okay. Alderman Fruin.
Chief, I assume, or maybe I'll ask, is this being studied in conjunction with Town of Normal, McLean County, and Illinois State? Are you kind of all going about this with the same process?
I'm not sure about the county. Obviously we all have fiscal restraints. I know that Normal, since they had the tax increase, they dedicated some money, and I know Chief Bleichner is looking at doing something there. So obviously we're going to share information, but it will still be the same. There won't be anything until next year, but I know they're going to exercise due diligence, and hey, if we can both share information, we're not on the same systems, but we both have the same goals. We want something that's, the officers don't have to worry about as far as downloading the information, ease of use. They have to be comfortable with it, but yes.
Alderman Lauer.
And I know I'm going to ask some questions that we can't answer right now, and there's a lot of unknowns with this. But some things come to mind. I've actually been looking at this for some time, as I know you have. The technology is certainly increasing, and it's going to make our officers more effective, and that's a very positive thing, I'm sure. One of the things that we probably should be mindful of is that we lose a lot of officer time due to injuries, and I'm wondering if there wouldn't be a way that we could look at the possibility, maybe other forces out there using the current technology and minimizing, some of the foot chases, and injuries that result from those types of things. I know on the backside, the technology is going to be very expensive, and the labor to encapsulate that and manage it is going to be even more so. I guess moving forward, those questions would be something that I'd like to, look further into. And do we have neighbors that are currently using those? Do we have anybody in our neighboring counties?
Sheriff Schaffner in DeWitt County. I actually have worked with him before. They've had him for approximately a year. He has 30 that they've had. He seems pleased with them. But, the law doesn't actually change as far as some of the consent either until the first of the year, so they're basically walking up and telling people, but he likes them. And, obviously he's got jail staff also, so yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Looks like that's it. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So we move right along. There's an interlocal agreement between the City of Bloomington for this accepting the memorial grant. Is there a motion to approve and for purpose of discussion?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Alderwoman Painter. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Alderman Lauer. Discussion. Okay, then if we're ready to vote, obviously I vote is in favor. Okay. We just need to bring back solid waste. We'll talk. The 9-0, there are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jim. Yeah, excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My apologies, I didn't know I was
I
up.
saw you were doing that.
I was
sitting
waiting
back
and I
thinking,
thought,
okay,
well,
go
we'll
ahead.
see, okay.
It's the Jim Cart Show.
Thought I wanted to have it up, you never know, and so, okay, all right. Well, thank you, Mayor, City Council, appreciate it. I'll start off by handing out an executive summary of what you're going to see tonight. So on that fun note to start off with, tonight is a great night for our staff, for Public Works staff with the Sidewalk Master Plan. It has been a document that has been done completely in-house with our own staff, and so I'd actually ask two of them to come tonight. Specifically, I'd like to point them out. We have Steve Arney. He is a miscellaneous technician of Public Works Administration. He was the majority of the writer of this plan. He wrote or rewrote almost all of it. And then Jeff Raines, recently promoted to Engineering Tech 2. So again, he is the person who is empowered and has taken ownership of this plan. Many of you know that he's the person that responds very quickly to customer service. He is excellent at that. But not only does he have excellence in customer service, he also helps with the GIS component of it and has also helped shape this whole program. So again, this was there's also other people here that in the back. Jay Tetzloff. I'd like to thank Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts with the tree conflicts and some of the how do you work with trees. That's a tough issue. And so we give big thanks to them as well. So moving on, let's talk about this plan that we have before you tonight. So we are trying to accomplish three things. You've seen this before. This is something we'll try to make this brief, but again, it's important to kind of highlight some of the things that we're trying to accomplish. ADA, the American Disabilities Act, it is a requirement that the City of Bloomington has a transition plan. This
this sidewalk master plan acts as a legal document also and allows us to say we are in compliance with the ADA requirements. So that's one of the things we accomplish. Another thing we accomplish is sidewalks aren't perfect in town. I mean, we know there are 32 miles that we would consider the poor or failed, between poor and failed. Out of 423 miles, while that's not quite 10%, that's not great. The positive news is they're better than our streets, and so that's a great news. If we could drive cars on our sidewalks, apparently we'd be okay. But so with there are sidewalk panels that do need to be replaced. So we do have a system that we're going to be able to go through and be able to fix what we do have. This is a 10-year process. And then the next thing is, without funding, we can't respond to emergency repairs. I don't know if any of you remember last year, the fiscal year, we didn't really have any good money put towards sidewalks. And some of you would email me, oh, we have a concern here. And we said, that's great, we'll barricade it till next year. And that's really not a place that we as a city want to be. We ran out of funding. And whenever we did get some allotted money, we spent it like within a month, it was gone. So there's a lot of need out there. There's a lot of people that have need. So let me point out a couple of the key features of this plan that we thought were excellent. While you can't read this, the whole point is the colors. You'll see the deep red to the deep green. Okay, the point I show you is that you go from 1, which is failed, to 10, which is brand new for sidewalk. We came up with a rating system in the Public Works Department. Our own staff did. Troy Olson, who is our GIS technician, was instrumental in that. Kevin Cothe, our city engineer. Those two were really had the brainchild of how do you come up with a rating system, because there's no national system right now. And then moving on, we integrated it into our geographic information system, our GIS. We actually have theme out there, and you can even see this is a sample. And so you can see everything along one street. We didn't, some people, even if they rated, they do it block by block. No, we actually looked parcel by parcel, which is unbelievable. And so we utilize summer staff. We utilize some relatively cheap labor to be able to help us with proper training and checks. So it was a great system to be able to help us get something functional that not many people have, to give you, the council, some ability to make policy level decisions. And so because of this really out-of-the-box thinking that our own staff came up with, we were awarded a statewide award. So it's funny because it's a transportation project of the year under $5 million. Why would this be a transfer? That's because they said, we don't know anybody that did this, so we're going to give you this award, and we're going to add a Management Innovation Award statewide next year for people like you, because we've never had this. And so this was one that we even were nominated on a nationwide level. It went to the national board for consideration. So as the touch and go, I'm going to let you, handle it. We want it back, but... So yes, but so again, this is the other thing that we've asked you as Public Works many times. As a council, we need policy level help. We need you as a council to help staff set a service level and determine what that service level is, and then fund us appropriately to get the work done. This plan does that. We're asking you to consider a service level of 5 out of 10. And what that does is that gives us the ability then to have a target to shoot for. Here's the good thing. We vary our sidewalk funding anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000, $300,000. What we're looking for to be able to get this plan in 10 years, get all of our sidewalks rated 4 or less, up to a 5 rating, only $600,000 a year. So if you as a council said sidewalks are a priority over a 10-year period and a few $100,000 more, all of the community, there would be no sidewalks that are rated less than a 5. Well, that's superb. That's in it's much better shape than we are in other areas. And so while we're talking millions for other infrastructure, sometimes tens or hundreds of millions, we're in the hundreds of thousands. And that's actually a positive. That's a positive that we were able to come up with as part of this plan. So we're thankful for that. But again, while there's still quite a bit of sidewalk that is not in good shape, we're not in terrible shape. So moving on, we really wanted to just tell you, what do we do from here? So what's the implementation strategies? Many times, that's great. Thanks for passing that. Now what do we do? So, again, next year's budget
If you as a council determine to use that at the proper funding level, set that at the proper funding level, then we'll look to fix sidewalks on a block-by-block basis, and then other ones as they come up, because remember, we're doing this block-by-block type mentality. So if we have any type of resurfacing program, that impacts the ramps. The ramps are separate from that $600,000, let me make sure I note, because the ramps have probably as much or equal to anything else in the plan or more cost. We have 4 out of 5 ramps are non-compliant in the city of Bloomington. And because ADA has changed over the years, even ones that we fixed 8 years ago are now non-compliant, and we have to redo them if we come through and do the street. And so we have a lot of cost as a city because of that. And so half of that cost is staggering. So what we look at is about 10% of our overall resurfacing dollars go toward ramps and ramps alone. But we'd be looking at worst first, complaint-driven basis. We look then, you also have the question of people want sidewalk where there's not sidewalk. There is some of that in this plan, but I will make sure that I say now and early and often, it's not going to be the end-all, fix-all for council. If we, with people that, want sidewalk at some of the various gaps, we might have to look at other capital-type projects. This is really minorly taking care of some of the gaps in some of the out years, but majority of this is maintaining what we have. Okay, and so with all that being said, at this point, just like to open this up for any comments or questions that you have.
Comments, questions for Jim? Alderwoman Burgess.
How often will you be updating the sidewalk quality map?
Actually, one of the great things is we update it annually. Every year we have been updating it, and so as we both have our own streets and sewers crews, if work is done, or other crews, we're updating that map, and we can do that internally. So again, Jeff Rains, and we actually have a seasonal that helps him, that was instrumental too in helping with this. We have assistance through that as well. So they've actually been able to keep up with it fairly well.
Jim?
Just a very quick comment. It seemed like the schools, the blocks surrounding our schools, if we're encouraging our kids to walk and bike to school, would be pretty critical. Just a thought.
Well, we do have in the sidewalk master plan, there's so many details, I wasn't going to go through all of them, but there is a high, medium, and low priority, and school routes, school walking routes that are posted on our website, those obviously have a high to highest priority. So yes, that's a great point, Alderman Fruin.
Alderman Black.
Thank you, and thanks Jim and Steve and Jeff. Right, Jeff? Yes, great. So this is one of the best written plans I've ever seen. Just in the sense that it's something that everyone can understand. And I'm having trouble finding it right now. Sometimes engineering can be, way above my head. But there's a whole section where you break down the different alternatives that are out there. So I remember rubber sidewalks were talked about, different ways. And a lot of times people will come to me, pretend to be sidewalk experts, and if the city would only do this, why don't we go on that route? And it's great to be able to point to a document as to this was something that we assessed. It's not really feasible at this time, but we'll circle back and look at it in the future. So that to me is one of the most valuable assets of this report. So thank you.
And if I can say again, once more, our staff was amazing. They took ownership of this. This really wasn't administration, it wasn't myself. Our staff took ownership of this, and they really drove this process. They wanted this completed, and they took pride in this. So this was really just a great thanks to them.
Kevin?
I just want to throw one little thing in, and I don't need an answer tonight, but you and I have talked about one area on the eastern side of my ward that I was unaware of, that we have school children walking with no sidewalk at all. How many areas do you think that we have that kids are currently walking to school or trying to get to the bus and don't have access to a sidewalk at all? And do we have a lot more to go to get there? In other words, do we have that goal, and are we looking at that? Are we setting that as a high priority?
No. In fact, just being frank with you, that we do have some funding set out for gaps. But I will tell you this: for the school walking routes, there's sidewalk everywhere. There is a school walking route. Is there a sidewalk in front of every house that a child lives in? No, there is not. In the city, we don't have that. If we were to say we have to have a sidewalk in front of every house that has a child, the cost definitely escalates beyond what we have it.
But being realistic, we were talking about a major thoroughfare that has and it's a major source for kids to get to the bus and to school. How many of those, and I don't know whether we've even looked at that. So I wonder if we really shouldn't take a little bit further look at this and prioritize inside this plan what we really need to look at first, and not just based on what's currently there and what we need to fix, but based on the usability and the people that are actually using it.
For what it's worth, if my professional recommendation would be, please pass this, fund it appropriately, and then any additional items that you set as a council as a priority, we look at a capital project. Because again, there are, Ireland Grove Road, Empire, there are major roads in this community that are arterial roads that don't have sidewalk. That, we try to say, well, how can you get from point A to point B? Those are some major capital projects that we could look at. But this document is not that. This document, again, goes back to the heart of maintain what we have, with looking at some other key things.
Alderwoman Schmidt.
Could you wrap this around the 50/50 program?
Thank you. My apologies. I actually didn't address that when it was one of the items in the presentation, so I actually just nicely skipped over that, right? Isn't that wonderful? So yes, part of this program actually does accommodate the 50/50 sidewalk program. As you recall, actually in the past, about 5-10 years ago, we had that program and it was underutilized. Every year we had money go to waste. And then we had this mailer that went out one year, and it was Tony Meiselis, who was a civil engineer, helped. Jeff Raines was another. He was actually took ownership of that and said, I want to spend that money. And I remember he came to me and he had a brainchild. He said, I've got to spend it. How can I do it? And so he worked with Tony and they came up with a mailer. We said, let's make it happen. Ever since then, we've been spending the money and people have actually been doing it. 50/50 sidewalk program is a program that says, in front of my house, the sidewalk doesn't have a huge 5-inch gap, but it doesn't look as it's failed in some way, but it's not a high priority for us. But if we spend half of it, we'll spend half of it, you spend the other half, you have some skin in the game, we can get that done, and it's an improvement. People love it. People have been very thankful for it. Jeff runs that program as well. But this year there's no funding for the 50/50 sidewalk program. Moving forward, we'd like that.
Anything else? Oh, Alderwoman Rose.
Since Alderwoman Schmidt brought it up, I think it's good at this point perhaps to remind everyone that about how people pay for their sidewalks in the city of Bloomington, because the way we do it here is not the way other communities do it, and it's not the way other communities I've lived in have done it. And so I think it's worth bringing that up so we can maybe have a discussion as a council about whether or not we are doing it in the best, most effective, fairest way. I think to summarize, and Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, there's really 3 ways people get their sidewalks replaced. Number 1, they just do it and pay for it themselves. That does happen. Number 2, they can take advantage of the 50/50 program. Many people do. As has been noted, when funds are available, they run out very quickly these days, and in fact this year there were no funds at all. Or number 3, the sidewalk deteriorates to such a degree that the city says it needs to be fixed and we will pay for it 100%. And so that actually reflects the 3 different ways many communities have sidewalks paid for. We just happen to have a hybrid system where all 3 are utilized within our community. I'll simply point out, if we were to change the way that sidewalks are paid for, we could greatly increase the effectiveness of this sidewalk replacement program. We could make this master plan happen much more quickly and really take the level of our infrastructure up quite quickly. And just as an example, when I lived in Madison, they have a compulsory 50/50 program. Every 5 years, they evaluate your neighborhood. They have a rotating program. They evaluate your neighborhood, and they come in and they say, your sidewalk needs to be fixed. We will send you a bill. And that's just the way it works. I found this out 3 days after I purchased my very first home, and got a very polite letter from the city that I would have to pay for portions of the sidewalk, not the whole thing, of course, just the portions that need to be fixed. And I know the first concern bringing this up is, would that unfairly burden our lower income residents? I'd just like to point out that that is a question that we can consider as a council, and that most of our cost sharing programs take that into account and do provide some relief or some ability for low-income people to say to the city, we can't afford it, and for the city to provide that relief. So, but I just hope that we can have a conversation about how sidewalks are paid for and whether or not we might want to make some changes.
Thank you.
Last comment, if I could make to you, is if you as a council moving forward have a large amount of streets that are done, that would possibly change how we do this. Because again, with that block by block mentality, if you spend a large amount on a whole bunch of streets, we'd have a lot more sidewalk to do. So again, sidewalks still are tied to what we do with our resurfacing program. That's a key fact maybe for later.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Jim. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Can we have a? No. Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution that's been presented to us.
Okay. Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Howman. Any question, or any further discussion? Okay. The motion carries. No nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Okay. At this point, we move, Mr. Hale, City Manager, discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Just passing out just something for your information. We do have a very interesting opportunity during next Monday, the Committee of the Whole, to talk about downtown redevelopment and some very interesting proposals. We wanted to give you a heads up. I think there's a few that have had an opportunity to meet Steve Friedman, who is one of the owners, partners of S.B. Friedman Company. He will be in town together with his associate, Ron Adeep Bose, and they have been also spending some time to get to know Jeff Gabelhausen. They're in the process of doing that with David Bentley. We are looking at a public, an open public meeting presentation by Mr. Gabelhausen and followed by David Bentley, both of which have kind of a high-level presentation they will present to the City Council next Monday. With Mr. Friedman's help, we'll have some opening comments and information being shared on how should we, and especially you, the council, community, look at these public-private partnerships, some discussion after which. And in working with Mr. Friedman, he's kind of shared some of the things he's currently trying to do in getting additional information from the developers or have them comment on next Monday. So we are looking at significant time being spent, again, on this topic of downtown redevelopment. Several very interesting proposals that have been shared with city staff, and we look to have those presented to the council. We're not looking at any decision being made, but we want to make sure the council as a body gets these presentations as they have been done at a staff level. So just kind of giving you that kind of highlight. This is not the final agenda, but this is kind of what we're working on at this point in time. So just wanted to share that so the council knows what's coming before you next Monday. We may have to modify some of the other topics. I know Alderman Schmidt, we are still looking at trying to have discussion of the budget task force priorities too, but as you'll see, this will be a major time commitment for next Monday. Thank you.
Yeah, Alderman, Jim, did you have
Very encouraged by this, and I just wonder, my first reaction is, do we need a different venue? Is the entire city going to come? And I'm glad we're having a public session, but is this big enough for what we think is the anticipated crowd?
Well, again, this is not a public hearing. It's just an open public meeting like tonight's regular meeting. So, and once again, we don't anticipate the council making any decisions. So based on what we've had in the past, I don't see a need for a change of venue, but certainly if the council wants us to consider that, we could.
All right.
Real quick, Mayor, I just, looking at the schedule and the time frame here, the more they can send to us in writing ahead of time and less in PowerPoints that I've already read in a packet, I would really appreciate.
Yeah, excellent point. Thank you. Good. And in terms of my comment, the only thing I want to say is to thank you for Alderman Lauer and Alderman Sage and Alderman Black. We all participated in fire ops, and it was certainly very interesting to walk in the shoes of our firefighters, if only for a day. There were some times, thank you, Chief, for all your help and preventing me from being extra crispy mayor under certain circumstances. I very much appreciate that. Some other people might not appreciate that, but I do. So anyway, we certainly appreciate that. And I also wanted to just to let everybody know, Alderman Black, I'm sorry, I don't think we can afford drones and robots. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much. Any aldermanic comments?
Mayor, yes, I'd like to
Sure.
say something if I could.
Sure.
While I believe in free speech, I'm disappointed by some misuse of this freedom, especially during public comment at our city council meetings and in emails that are sent to the entire council and mayor. While we only heard sarcasm tonight, I would like to share my thoughts with you. If I were thinking about moving my family or my business to Bloomington and were to view a YouTube video of our city council's public comment, I would think twice about moving here. My thoughts would be if residents speak to their aldermen as potted plants, idiots, and brown shirt Nazis, how do they treat each other? I welcome when residents send me emails with their questions. I welcome when residents write or call and say no to this or yes to that. It helps me with my decision making. I welcome engaging with residents and hearing their concerns and what they like about our city, as well as what they would like to see improved or changed. We do not always agree. However, I do try to be respectful in asking questions and explaining my position. What I do not welcome is how our council is treated by some residents and non-residents. If those of you who try to bully us by calling us names have better ways of governing our city, I ask, why are you not seated in this horseshoe? I have heard that we do not listen during public comment. I will not speak for my fellow aldermen, but if you want me to listen, share your thoughts with civility. Treat me as you would like to be treated, with respect. Refer to me by my given name. It's Diana Howman, and not some ugly name that would have gotten my mouth washed out with soap when I was younger. Luckily, our city council members are adults, and the constant name calling does not bring us down like it would a child whose character is still being developed. Luckily, most of our citizens are polite and respectful of their elected officials. I like to focus on the polite and respectful citizens. Thank you.
Just to clarify, once again, I'll put in a plug. Our mayoral open house, we almost always have civility, because when you're sitting around talking, looking across from each other, it's a lot harder to do that than if you're doing it without a name attached or, behind a, an internet or email. Anyway, Alderwoman Burgess and Lauer.
I just would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone and to encourage everyone to spread the word that this Saturday, October 17th, is the Household Hazardous Waste Collection event. It is a way for you to safely dispose of your dangerous chemicals and other assorted items that you might have sitting in your garage and hopefully not in your home. It's Saturday, October 17th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Mitsubishi Motors on, of course, Mitsubishi Motorway in Normal, Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Lauer.
Yes, again, I'd like to underline what your comments and thank not only Chief Moore, but the professional, Unit 49, the union, the firefighters union, our professional firefighters here in Bloomington do an outstanding job. And we have a very large amount of very professional individuals that have a huge amount of knowledge. And actually, it's more vast than even I completely understand now and understood then. I have a better understanding of what they are and who they are and what they can do for us, and not only us, but the region and certainly the county, and they're called upon to do that from time to time. We have some specializations in that department that are outstanding, and we were exposed to a very, very quick and dirty boot camp on what a firefighter may be called to do. And it was very, very physically challenging for this 53-year-old old guy or young guy. I don't care how you look at it, but I'm not 30 anymore, and I wish I was.
I was sore too, so I'm with you.
We did some really outstanding things. And,
He's
and
not
witnessed,
30 either.
Right, a flashover as well as going in. I got to go in as a hose man and put out a fire with victims inside a building. And I also got to tear up using the jaws of life and other large pieces of equipment, a GM product, which has made my coworkers very proud. So it is an extremely challenging job, and it's made it very relevant and real. I would encourage anyone else in the next couple of years, if you get the opportunity to do that, please partake in it. I think it was a very, very good learning experience. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you very much. At this point, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Howman. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Milwampue, and by the way, Avosue. We're adjourned.